For years he had lived among the stars, traveling to a distant planet where an alien queen ruled with power and grace. At first, it was just another mission, diplomatic, cold, and professional. But as time passed, something more profound began to grow between them. He was a human, and she was an alien queen. Their worlds were different in every possible way, from the way they looked to the cultures they came from. Yet in the midst of their differences, something strange happened. Their paths crossed, and in that crossing they found a connection that neither expected. The protagonist, Adam, had been sent to this planet as part of an intergalactic peace agreement. He was a representative of Earth, one of the few humans to venture so far from home. At first, the Queen's cold demeanor had intimidated him. She was beautiful, distant, and untouchable, her eyes filled with the weight of her responsibilities. But as they spent more time together, Adam began to see past her regal exterior. He saw the woman beneath the Queen who carried the burden of her people, was forced to make decisions that affected thousands of lives. The Queen, Illyra, had never expected to become so attached to a human. Her life had been one of duty, an obligation. She was the ruler of her people, and every decision she made had consequences that reached far beyond her own desires. Adam was different from the others who had come before him. He was kind, understanding, and most of all, patient. He never rushed her, never pushed her, and allowed her to be herself without the weight of her crown on her shoulders. He was a rare comfort in a life full of political games and endless responsibilities. As they spent time together, Illyra found herself opening up to him in ways she had never done with anyone before. The moments they shared, whether it was discussing the stars or walking through her royal gardens, were filled with a quiet peace. Adam was a human, but to her, he felt like something more: a companion, a friend, and in some moments, a lover. But she kept those feelings hidden deep within, afraid of what might happen if she allowed herself to truly feel for him. Adam, on the other hand, struggled with his own emotions. He had come to the planet to do a job, but somewhere along the way, his heart had become tangled in the life he had found here. Every day he found himself growing more fond of the alien queen. He admired her strength, her wisdom, and the way she carried herself with such dignity. Over time, his feelings for her deepened, moving from respect to love. But love was a dangerous thing on this planet. Lyra's people had strict rules and traditions. A queen was expected to marry a king from another powerful family, someone who could secure alliances and strengthen her reign. Illyra's duty to her people was paramount, and love, as Adam knew, was not something that could easily change the course of history. Still, Adam couldn't help the way he felt. Every smile she gave him, every glance, felt like an invitation to something deeper. He had tried to bury his feelings, tried to focus on his mission, but it was impossible. She was constantly on his mind, and the idea of being with her, even if it seemed impossible, lingered in his heart. There were moments when Illyra would look at him. For a split second, Adam would think that maybe, just maybe, she felt the same way. The way her eyes softened when they spoke, the way she reached for his hand when they stood together, or the way she laughed at his jokes in a way that made him feel like he was the only person in the universe. But those moments were fleeting. Illyra would always pull away, returning to her duties, to her responsibilities, to the life of a queen. Adam would watch her go, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he could never be the one to rule by her side. He was just a human, and she was a queen. Their worlds were as different as night and day, and the gap between them seemed impossible to cross. Despite this, Adam couldn't stop dreaming. He dreamed of a life where he and Illyra could be together, where they could stand side by side, not as ruler and subject, but as equals. He dreamed of a future where love wasn't just a fleeting moment, but something real. But as the years passed, those dreams began to fade. Illyra's responsibilities weighed heavier on her, and Adam began to fear that he would never be more than just a fleeting memory to her. He was a part of her past, but her future was already decided. There would be no room for a human man in the heart of a queen. And yet, he couldn't let go. There was one thing that kept him going: the small moments they shared, the quiet conversations, shared laughter, and the understanding between them. He would treasure those moments for the rest of his life, even if he never got the chance to be with her the way he dreamed. But that all changed one evening. Under the glow of 1,000 stars, Adam made a decision, one that would alter the course of his life forever. He had been holding on to his feelings for far too long, and now it was time to do something about it. He couldn't wait any longer. Couldn't keep pretending that his heart wasn't already given to her. He was going to tell her how he felt. Was going to propose to the beautiful alien queen, no matter the consequences. It was a risk, a gamble. But in his heart, he knew he had to do it. If not now, then when? And so, with a deep breath and a heart full of hope, Adam made his way to Illyra's palace. He had no idea what the future would hold, but he was determined to make this moment count. The years of love had built up to this one moment, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. Tonight he would ask her to be his, and nothing could stop him. Adam stood outside the grand doors of the palace, his heart racing like a wild drumbeat in his chest. His mind was a storm of emotions, excitement, fear, doubt, and hope. He had spent years waiting for this moment, building up the courage, gathering his thoughts, and now the time had finally come. Tonight he would ask the question that had been weighing on his heart for so long. It had been a long road to get here. From the first diplomatic meeting, where he had been introduced to Queen Illyra, to the countless days spent working alongside her. Adam had never imagined that something as simple as a conversation would turn into something so meaningful, but it had. Their friendship had deepened into something that felt like love, something real, and Adam couldn't ignore it any longer. The weight of the decision was heavy on his shoulders. He knew the risks. He was a human, and she was a queen. Her people had expectations, and she had a duty to them that could never be ignored. But in his heart, Adam felt that what they had was something worth fighting for, something worth risking everything. Taking a deep breath, he finally pushed open the doors. Stepping into the grand hall where Illyra awaited him, the room was lit with soft light, the kind that gave everything a gentle glow. The air was cool, and the scent of exotic flowers filled the space. Illyra sat on her throne, regal and composed, her eyes watching him closely as he entered. Ash! She looked. As stunning as ever, her golden hair cascading down her shoulders like a waterfall. Her deep purple robes flowing elegantly around her. There was a calmness in her eyes, but also a quiet strength, the kind that could command armies and inspire loyalty. Adam, she greeted him with a soft smile. You're here. What is it that brings you to me tonight? He swallowed hard, his throat dry. The words he had practiced so many times seemed to vanish from his mind, replaced with an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. But he couldn't back out now. He had to say it, no matter how impossible it felt. I need to talk to you, Adam said, his voice steady despite the storm inside. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers. I've been thinking about this for a long time, Illyra, longer than I can even explain. You're the most important person in my life, and I can't imagine a future without you in it. Illyra's expression softened, and she stood from her throne, her presence powerful, yet gentle. She walked towards him, her footsteps light, almost graceful. What are you trying to say, Adam? She asked, her voice filled with curiosity and warmth. Adam took another step closer. He could feel the heat of her gaze, the way her eyes seemed to search for the truth in his. His heart beat faster. What I'm trying to say is that I love you, he said, the words finally escaping his lips. I've loved you for so long, Illyra. I can't keep pretending that I don't. I don't care about the differences between us. I don't care about what others think. All I know is that I want to be with you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know I'm just a human, and you're a queen, but none of that matters to me. What matters is you. Will you marry me? For a moment there was silence. Illyra stood still, her expression unreadable, her gaze focused on Adam. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of the question he had just asked. Adam waited, holding his breath, praying for an answer. Any answer. But she said nothing. Her eyes shifted, and she walked past him to the window that overlooked the vast land beyond the palace. The stars were shining brightly in the sky, far and distant, like a reminder of how small they both were in the grand scheme of the universe. Illyra placed a hand on the glass, her back to him as she took a deep breath. Adam's heart sank, Silence stretched on, and he felt the cold grip of fear take hold of him. He thought he knew what her answer would be, but that didn't stop the doubt from creeping into his mind. "Illyra," he whispered, his voice breaking the silence. "Please, say something." She turned slowly, her face calm, but there was something. In her eyes, something that Adam couldn't quite understand. She looked at him, her expression filled with a sadness he hadn't seen before. She took a step forward, her eyes soft but filled with the weight of something more. "Adam," she began, her voice quiet but steady, "I never expected you to feel this way. You are an incredible person, and I admire you more than I can put into words. But there are things you don't understand, things I cannot explain easily." Adam's heart raced. He'd expected a rejection, but the way she spoke made him feel as if she was struggling with something inside. He stepped closer to her, desperate for an answer. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I don't care about the differences. I care about you, Illyra. I love you. That's all that matters to me." Her eyes filled with emotion, but she quickly looked away, as though she was fighting to keep herself composed. "You're right," she said softly. "I've never met anyone like you. But my position, my duties, they are not so easily set aside. I am the queen of my people, and I cannot make decisions that would jeopardize everything I've worked for. Everything my ancestors have built." Adam felt his chest tighten, the truth of her words hitting him hard. He had known the risks, but hearing them from her, in her voice, made it feel like an impossible mountain to climb. She reached for his hand then, her touch gentle but firm. "I cannot marry you, Adam. Not the way you want me to," she whispered. The words felt like a blow, knocking the wind out of him. He stared at her, his heart shattering. How could this be happening? How could the love he had waited for, the love that had filled his soul for years, end like this? But Illyra wasn't done. She squeezed his hand, looking him in the eyes. "But I do care for you, more than you will ever know. You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. This is not the end, Adam, but the beginning of something different. It will take time, but there may be a way for us to be together. It will be difficult and dangerous, but it's possible." Adam's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected that. Maybe there was still hope. "Will you trust me?" she asked, her voice filled with quiet determination. Adam looked into her eyes, seeing something there that he hadn't noticed before, a flicker of hope, a spark of possibility. He nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words settle in his heart. "I trust you," he said, his voice firm despite the confusion and pain he still felt. I trust you with everything." The silence between them seemed to stretch for hours, even though it was only a few seconds. Adam's heart still pounded in his chest as Illyra's words echoed in his mind. He had asked her to marry him, and she had rejected him not completely, but enough to leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about their future. Illyra had told him she cared for him, more than he could ever understand. But that didn't change the fact that she couldn't marry him the way he wanted. Her responsibility as a queen came first, and her duty to her people was a weight that couldn't be lifted. Her words had stung. But they also left him with a glimmer of hope. She hadn't rejected him entirely. She had just placed conditions on their future. It was something at least Adam looked at Illyra, trying to understand her. She stood before him, her expression calm, but there was a sadness in her eyes. Something he hadn't noticed before. He took a step toward her, his hand reaching for hers. "Illyra," he said softly, "what do you mean? What can we do? If we can't be together the way I imagined, then how can we make this work?" Illyra turned to face him, her gaze steady. She didn't pull away when he took her hand, and for the first time, he felt a slight warmth in her touch. It was a small comfort, but it meant the world to him. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Adam," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. I never imagined that this would be so difficult for both of us. The truth is, I cannot simply throw aside everything I've built. Everything my people have built, just for my personal happiness. I wish it were that simple." Adam's heart ached. He had known that being with her would never be easy. But hearing her speak about it so matter-of-factly made the reality hit even harder. "But I don't understand," he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. "We care for each other. Is it that enough?" She paused, her eyes searching his face as if she were looking for something, trying to find the right words. "It's not that simple, Adam," she said softly. "The laws of my people, the expectations of my kingdom, everything is tied to my role as queen. I've been trained for this from birth. To lead, to make decisions that are not just for my own happiness, but for the good of my entire people. I cannot afford to make a choice that could endanger everything I have worked for." Adam's mind raced. He had spent so many years falling in love with Alira, thinking that if they were together, they could overcome anything. But now, it felt as if the very foundation of their relationship was crumbling before him. How could he have been so blind to the challenges she faced? How could he have thought that love alone would be enough to bridge the gap between them? "And if I had been born on your world," Adam asked, his voice barely a whisper, "if I had been one of your people, would this be easier? Would you be able to love me then?" Alira looked at him with sadness in her eyes, her hand gently squeezing his. "It's not about who you are, Adam. It's about what I am. I am the queen. It's my love, my duty. They are intertwined in ways that cannot be separated. I cannot let my heart lead me down a path that could harm my kingdom. The responsibility I carry is too great." Adam's shoulders slumped, his heart sinking. He couldn't imagine a future where Alira and he couldn't be together. It felt impossible, heartbreaking, but then Alira spoke again, her voice filled with something he couldn't quite place. Was it hope? Or maybe determination? "There is a way," she said, her eyes meeting his with a new sense of purpose. "But it will not be easy. It will require sacrifice from both of us, and even then, I cannot promise that it will work. But if we are both willing to take that risk, we can try." Adam blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "What are you saying? What is the way?" Alira took a deep breath and slowly let go of his hand, stepping back. She walked to a nearby table and picked up a small, ancient-looking scroll. With a careful motion, she unrolled it and spread it across the table in front of them. The script on the scroll was foreign to Adam, a language he could barely recognize. But Alira pointed to it as if it held the key to their future. "This is an ancient law of my people," she explained, her voice soft but serious. "It is called the Path of Union. It's a ritual, an old custom that allows a queen to marry outside her royal bloodline. But it's not without consequences. The process is dangerous, and it requires not only the queen's commitment, but also the commitment of her chosen partner. It's a binding contract, not just of love, but of duty. The couple who chooses this path must face trials together, trials that will test both their hearts and their loyalty." Adam stared at the scroll, feeling a mix of hope and fear stirring inside him. "What kind of trials? What do we have to do?" Alira's eyes grew darker, and she looked away, as if the weight of the decision had settled back onto her shoulders. "The trials vary, but they are always meant to prove that the bond between the two people is strong enough to withstand the weight of the throne and the kingdom. If either of us falters, then the union will be broken, and the consequences will be severe, not just for us, but for the people." Adam felt the gravity of her words. He had always known that being with Alira would be difficult, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The stakes were higher than he ever could have guessed. But despite the fear that threatened to overtake him, he also felt something else, a flicker of determination. Alira was offering him a chance to be with her, even if it meant facing unimaginable challenges. And he wasn't going to let that slip away without a fight. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," Adam said, his voice firm, even though his heart was racing with uncertainty. "I'll face the trials with you, Alira. I'll prove that we belong together." Alira turned to him, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. "I believe you, Adam, but we must be prepared for what lies ahead. The trials will be unlike anything either of us has faced before. Even if we succeed, it won't be the end of our struggles. But if we are strong, if we hold on to each other, we may find a way to make this work." Adam nodded, a sense of resolve filling him. This was their chance, their one chance to be together. And no matter how difficult it would be, he would face it all, side by side with Alira. The days that followed Illyra's revelation were filled with a whirlwind of emotions. Adam had agreed to face the trials, to walk the dangerous path she had outlined. But as the days passed, the weight of their decision began to settle heavily. On him, it was no longer just a question of love. It was a question of survival, of proving that their bond could withstand the crushing. Weight of duty and tradition, Illyra had not said much after that. She had retreated into her chambers, spending hours poring over ancient scrolls, consulting advisors, and preparing herself for what lay ahead. Adam, meanwhile, was left to wrestle with his thoughts and fears. He had always been confident in his love for her, but now facing the reality of the trials, that confidence began to falter. The trials were not just tests of their hearts. They were tests of their strength, their loyalty, and their ability to overcome impossible odds. Illyra had explained that the path of union was a sacred tradition, one that had been used by ancient queens to prove the worthiness of their chosen partners. It was not a simple ceremony. It was a series of challenges that would push both of them to their limits. They would be tested physically, mentally, and emotionally. If either of them failed, the consequences would be dire not just for them, but for Illyra's entire kingdom. Adam had never felt more uncertain in his life. Could he really face these trials? Could he truly prove himself worthy of Illyra, not just as her lover, but as her equal in the eyes of her people? And what if he failed? What if he wasn't strong enough to live up to the challenges ahead? The thought weighed heavily on him. He had always been a fighter. He had fought for his place in the galaxy, fought for peace, fought for the things he believed in. But this was different. This was Illyra. This was the woman he loved, the woman he had spent years trying to understand. The thought of losing her, of failing her, was a fear he couldn't bear. It wasn't just the trials that scared him. It was the unknown. He had never been to Illyra's world before. He didn't understand the depths of her people's customs, the politics that governed their lives. He had always thought he was just a small part of her world, a human in an alien kingdom. But now he was expected to stand by her side, to face the trials of a queen. It felt like an impossible task. One evening, as the two of them sat together in Illyra's private gardens, the tension between them was palpable. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts. Illyra sat across from Adam, her eyes staring out at the horizon, lost in thought. Adam could see the weight of her duty on her face, the burden she carried as both a queen and a woman who had fallen in love with someone she could not have. "Are you ready for this?" Illyra asked, her voice soft but firm. "Once we begin the trials, there's no turning back. It will change everything for us. It will change my people's perception of us, of you. You'll be seen as my chosen partner, the one I stand beside. And if we fail, it will be the end of everything." Adam looked at her, his heart heavy. He knew she was right. There was no going back. They had made their decision, and now they had to see it through, but the fear of failure still lingered in his mind, gnawing at him. "I don't know if I'm ready," Adam admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can live up to what they expect of me. I'm just a human, Illyra. I'm not like you, not like your people. I don't have the strength, the power, the knowledge that you do." Illyra turned to him, her eyes softening with understanding. She reached out and took his hand in hers, her grip warm and comforting. "Adam, you don't have to be like us," she said quietly. "You don't have to be like anyone else. You only have to be true to yourself. It's what I need from you. Your strength isn't in what you can do alone, but in what we can do together. The trials are about our bond, our trust in one another. They are meant to test how far we are willing to go for each other, not to measure how strong we are on our own." Adam looked into her eyes, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. Illyra's words comforted him, but they also reminded him of the path ahead. The trials wouldn't be easy. They would push him to his limits, test his resolve. If Illyra believed in him, maybe, just maybe, he could find the strength he needed to succeed. "I'll try," he said quietly, his voice filled with determination. "I'll try for you. For us." Illyra smiled, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and affection. "It's all I ask, Adam. We'll face this together. You're not alone in this. We are a team, and no matter what happens, we'll fight through it, side by side." Adam squeezed her hand, feeling a sense of peace settle in his chest. For the first time in days, the fear that had plagued him seemed to fade. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that with Alira by his side, he would face whatever came with courage. The days leading up to the trials passed quickly. Lyra prepared for the ceremony with her advisors, while Adam spent his time learning about the customs of her people, trying to understand the deep-rooted traditions that had governed their lives for centuries. He trained in combat, tested his mind with puzzles, and did everything he could to prepare himself for the challenges ahead. But the real preparation wasn't in the physical trials. It was in the emotional strength he needed to face the uncertainty, the fear, and the possibility of failure. It was about learning to trust in Alira, in their bond, and in the love that had brought them this far. The path ahead was unclear, but Adam knew that he wasn't walking it alone. As the day of the trials finally arrived, Adam stood beside Alira, ready to face whatever came. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the tests that lay ahead, but he was sure of one thing: he would give everything he had for her, for their future, and for the love that had brought them to this point. The trials had begun. The morning sun had barely risen when Adam and Alira stood at the edge of the ancient arena. The air was thick with the tension of what was to come. The trials were about to begin. Everything they had worked for, all the time they had spent preparing, had led to this moment. There was no turning back now. Adam felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just about his love for Alira anymore. It was about proving that love was strong enough to overcome everything else: the laws, the expectations, the traditions that stood in their way. He looked at Alira beside him, her calm demeanor hiding the storm of emotions she had shared with him just days before. Alira was ready. Her face was a mask of confidence, but Adam could see the subtle tension in her posture, the way her hand clenched into a fist before relaxing again. She was nervous too. This was a risk for her as much as it was for him. She too had everything to lose. "You're not alone," Alira said softly, her voice a whisper only he could hear. She turned to him, her eyes full of quiet strength. "We do this together, no matter what happens." Adam nodded, his heart swelling with affection for her. He had come to love her not just as a queen, but as the woman she was, a woman who cared for him, who had chosen him against all odds, a woman who carried the weight of her people on her shoulders, yet still managed to show him kindness and warmth. He wasn't just fighting for their love anymore. He was fighting for her future, for their chance to be together. The arena was a vast, open space, with high stone walls that had stood for centuries. It was here that the queens of her people had faced their trials, where they had proven their worthiness. It was their turn. The sound of footsteps echoed in the air as a group of royal attendants appeared, each one carrying a ceremonial object. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the very ground beneath them could sense the significance of this day. "This is it," Alira said, her voice steady but tinged with an emotion Adam couldn't quite place. "We begin." The first trial was one of physical strength and endurance. It was designed to test their stamina, their ability to face hardship and survive. Adam had trained for this, but nothing could fully prepare him for the grueling challenge that awaited them. The arena floor was covered in a soft, fine sand, and in the center stood a massive stone structure, an obstacle course that seemed impossible to complete. The attendants spoke in low, formal tones, explaining the rules. Adam and Alira would each have to make their way through the course, facing obstacles that ranged from physical barriers to intense, high-pressure challenges designed to test both their bodies and their minds. Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped forward, his eyes locked on the course. The first part of the trial was a series of high walls that they would need to climb, followed by a maze of thick ropes that hung from above, requiring them to swing from one end to the other. Adam glanced at Alira, who was already preparing herself, stretching her arms and legs with practiced ease. She had faced trials like this before, but this time she was not alone. "Ready?" Illyra asked, her eyes meeting his, filled with determination. Always, Adam replied. His voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The signal was given, and they were off. Adam moved quickly, scaling the first wall with ease. His body was pushed to its limits, but the thought of Illyra, waiting for him, the thought of proving himself worthy of her love, drove him forward. As he reached the top of the wall, he glanced over to see Illyra already halfway across the ropes. Her movements fluid and graceful, a testament to the years of training she had undergone as queen, but it wasn't just her physical strength that impressed him, it was her resilience. He could see the fierce determination in her eyes, the same determination that had led her to make the difficult choice to be with him. They were in this together, and that thought pushed Adam to keep going, no matter how hard it got. The obstacles grew more difficult as they moved through the course. There were tunnels to crawl through, weights to lift, and challenges that tested their mental agility. Adam's muscles screamed in protest, but he kept moving, refusing to give up. He could feel Illyra's presence beside him, pushing him forward. Every time he thought he couldn't go any further, he saw her effortlessly overcoming the next obstacle. It gave him the strength to keep going. The final challenge came in the form of a giant moving stone slab. It was large enough to crush anything in its path, and the only way to pass through was to work together to move it. Illyra was the first to approach, her eyes focused, her hands gripping the stone with determination. Adam joined her, his hands slipping slightly against the rough surface as they tried to move it together. The stone was heavy, and for a moment it seemed as though they might not succeed. But Illyra, with a quiet grunt, pushed harder, her strength unmatched. Adam pushed alongside her, his body straining with every muscle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the stone shifted, and they were able to slip through to the other side. They had done it. Together, as they emerged from the trial, gasping for breath, Adam looked at Illyra, his heart swelling with pride. She had been incredible, her strength and grace pushing them both to succeed. He had never felt more in awe of her than in that moment. But he also knew that this was just the beginning. There were more trials to come, more challenges that would test their bond and their resolve. Illyra turned to him, her face flushed with exertion, but filled with a quiet satisfaction. "We did it," she said softly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Adam smiled back, his heart light despite the exhaustion that weighed on him. "We make a great team." As they made their way to the next part of the arena, Adam couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. He had faced the first trial and come out victorious, not because of his own strength, because of Illyra. They were in this together, and as long as they stood side by side, he believed they could overcome anything. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, Adam felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days that followed their first success in the trials were filled with both hope and fear. Adam and Illyra had completed the physical challenges, and although exhausted, they had shown themselves capable of overcoming the odds. But the real test was yet to come. Illyra had warned him that the hardest trial would not be the one of strength, nor of endurance, but of the heart. The final trial was one of choice, the trial of loyalty. It was a trial that would test their commitment to each other, their trust in each other, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the love they shared. The arena was now silent. The once crowded space now felt empty, as if the very air itself was holding its breath in anticipation. Adam could feel the tension tightening around him. The final trial would be the hardest of all. He could see it in Illyra's eyes. This trial wasn't just about proving their love, but about proving their worth as partners in a world that had always seen them as separate. As they stood together in the center of the arena, Illyra spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was an undeniable seriousness in her words. "Adam," she began, "this is the final trial, the trial of choice. In this trial, we must decide if we are truly willing to face the future together, no matter the cost. The path before us is uncertain, and the price for failing is high." Adam swallowed hard, his heart racing. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew that this was at the moment that could change everything. "You and I have both given so much for this. The trials have tested us physically and emotionally. But now we must face our greatest fear. It's a fear of losing what we've fought for, the fear of choosing the wrong path. Alira took a deep breath and continued, There is a decision that I must make. A decision that involves you and me and the future of my people. If we pass this trial, we will be together. But if we fail, I will have to choose between my love for you and the future of my kingdom. Adam felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. He had always known that being with Alira wouldn't be easy, but this was different. She was asking him to make a choice, not just for their love, but for everything she had worked for her people's future. I understand, Adam said, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. But I won't ask you to choose between me and your people. I know the responsibility you carry. I know what it means to be the queen. I'll stand by whatever choice you make. Alira looked at him, her eyes searching his face for any hint of hesitation. It's not that simple, Adam. If we fail this trial, the consequences will not only affect us, they will affect my entire kingdom. Your presence here with me could change everything. And if the trials are deemed a failure, I will have to step down from the throne and leave everything I've known behind. Adam's heart pounded. The weight of her words hit him like a wave. You would give up your crown? He asked quietly, the thought of it almost too much to comprehend. Alira nodded. Slowly, if it meant being with you, I would. But I cannot make that decision lightly, and I will not make it until I am sure that you are willing to sacrifice everything for this. The tension in the air grew thick, almost unbearable. Adam stood in silence for a moment, processing what Alira had said. He had come this far, fighting. For a chance to be with her, he had faced every trial, every obstacle, and he had done it for love. But now, this was different. This wasn't about physical strength or endurance. This was about everything. This was about their future, their place in the galaxy, and the consequences of their choices. He turned to Alira, his heart full of emotion. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, he said, his voice quiet but filled with resolve. I love you, Alira. I would give up everything to be with you, your people, your kingdom. None of that matters to me. What matters is us. What matters is our future. Alira's eyes softened, and for a moment Adam could see the queen behind the walls she had built around herself. She had always been so strong, so composed, but now he saw the vulnerability in her eyes, the same vulnerability he had felt when he first admitted his feelings to her. You are willing to give up everything for me? She asked softly, her voice trembling slightly. Adam nodded. I don't need anything else. I just need you. Alira stood still for a long moment, her gaze locked on Adam's. Then slowly she stepped forward, closing the distance between them, reached out, her hand gently touching his cheek, her fingers warm against his skin. I love you too, she whispered. But I have to ask you one last time, are you sure? Because this choice will not just affect us. It will change everything. Adam looked into her eyes, his heart steady. I am sure, Alira. I've never been more sure of anything. Alira closed her eyes for a moment, as if taking in his words, feeling the weight of his promise. Then, slowly, she stepped back and turned to face the ancient altar that stood before them. It was an old structure, built long ago for the queens to make their most important decisions. It was here that they had to make their final choice, here, that they had to prove their loyalty to each other and to the kingdom. Alira spoke the ancient words, and the altar glowed with a soft golden light. The air around them seemed to hum with power, as if the very land was watching them, waiting for their decision. Adam took a deep breath, his hands still in Iraz. Together they stood at the altar, knowing that their fate was now sealed. Was no turning back. Alira turned to him once more, her eyes filled with determination. We may not know what the future holds, Adam, but I know that I want to face it with you. Whatever happens, we will face it together. Adam nodded, his heart filled with a sense of peace. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in his life, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead because he knew they would face them together. The final trial was over. They had made their choice. Now all that was left was to walk into the future hand in hand.